There really isn't anything I do that isn't effectively drawing. And that's the aspect of drawing that interests me, that one draws not because one knows or to describe, but because one seeks to discover. And the process of discovery is a drawing process. So what you're really doing is going from drawing to sculpture, photography to drawing to sculpture, so it's ricocheting. So when you wind up with finally a photographic work, they're collections of images that are composed in a way that become a larger whole than any single image. Why use photography to go away from the graphic? I can't say I'm clear about that, but I am deeply attracted to paradox. All of these pieces I've been developing with water. Another water, saying water, some Thames, dictionary of water. The big paradox with water is here is the most intimate substance you've known since before your consciousness, and yet it remains unfamiliar. And it's the lack of that knowledge that keeps it vivid and alive. And of course, trying to photograph it is an absurdity, which I enjoy, because the way I'm photographing water breaks down the descriptive, and water becomes a form of everything. It just opens up. The more I went into it, the more unknown there was. Over the years, I've been going to Iceland, and in about 88, 87, I started to use a camera in Iceland. And what I did was I photographed in a very traditional documentary way the sheepfolds in the landscape, and they're located in the most obscure parts of Iceland. But the real subject for me was my relationship to the landscape. How does a place become a lifestyle? Very early on in my travels there, I knew that I needed to maintain a relationship to this place because I felt how profoundly it made me feel myself in the world. And this became part of a series of books called To Place, which is an ongoing enterprise that I started in 1989 and I continue with to this day. So the first volume, which was called Bluff Life, it actually recorded a collection of drawings I made when I was staying in a lighthouse in southern Iceland for a few months. And it was up on a bluff overlooking the ocean. It was quite an exquisite location. It had such a strong, visceral feeling. It was the experience of this place where the landscape was palpable. And the weather really defines the sense of place in Iceland. You always had the cloud cover sitting on the land, and it would, raise up a little, you'd see a peak. Come back a year later, you see another part of that landscape. The clouds had moved over. I was very attached to not being able to see anything in Iceland, because there I had, of course, my imagination of what was out there. As an American, you're brought up to think that what you cannot see does not exist. It has an enormous influence on the look of things. There are many things out there, literally like the Arctic Circle, which are not visible, but they're present. You have a location, you have a scale, you have all the physical properties of the visible, but yet it's invisible. And I spent absurdly, but also very seriously, many years traveling up along the Arctic Circle in Iceland. And I found a high point in this landscape, which coincidentally was on the property of Hilda and Bjorn. And I photographed down onto the ocean where the map indicated the Arctic Circle intersected. The house was completely isolated. It was a home built in 1917. It was completely intact. It was like walking into another century. But the upstairs, which had this unbelievable view of the world, I mean, you're looking out across the window and you really felt like the ocean was going to be washing you away at any minute. I was able to get photographs of the clear horizon, and then as the fog started to soften and kind of erase the view a little bit. It has a kind of end-of-the-world feeling mixed with extreme purity and kind of beauty, just raw beauty. That really kind of keyed me to what the subject of the work was, which was this collection of circular and cyclical events. One of the things that I became incredibly fascinated with, Hilda and Bjorn, who were in their 70s when I was photographing them, were making their living by harvesting eiderdown. This room was used for their harvests. They would collect all the down, and they would pack it, and they would send it off to Reykjavik to sell. And of course, Hilda and Bjorn became the obvious cycle of life and death. So here we have, in the work Pi, which is the installation, we have 45 images, and it's hung about a foot above eye level. Hanging the work significantly higher than is comfortable to look at pushes the viewer back into the center of the room, and you tend to look at the flow of relationships among these images and not at the single images. And they become a circle around the viewer, very much the way horizon in a completely open area. The most important motif is the Arctic Circle itself and the horizon. Then you had portraits of Hilda and Bjorn, you had eiderdown nests, you had the daily weather cycle, you had guiding light. And when I was spending time with Hilda and Bjorn, they watched Guiding Light at 5 o'clock every evening. It's a soap opera from the United States, and it became also one of the daily cycles. The work, You Are the Weather, is 100 images that are mounted on like a plastic material, and then they're glued to the wall. And they are hung more or less at eye level and very densely, so just a few inches apart, and a slightly larger interval for each sequence. Roughly 15 different sequences, some in color, some in black and white. And each sequence is anywhere from 5 to 7 or 8 images. These images here, the one I'm looking at right now is kind of this classical, almost Greek look. The one over here is more like almost androgynous looking portrait or face, and so on. So I've compressed the range of expression. I've edited out the far reaches. We were always outside. She was always in the naturally heated waters. But the presence of humidity, mist, fog, or rain in some cases, allowed me at least to imagine that I could record visually this very fine level of reciprocity between a person and the place they're in. In this way, the subtleties and the nuance become a little bit more prominent, and also it kind of acclimatizes the viewer to a more delicate vocabulary in viewing the work. Ellipsis is a photographic work. It consists of 64 images, which are tiled into a square, 8 by 8 feet, like a chessboard. This building was built in the 20s, and it's associated with the very popular Icelandic activity of swimming, and it's a very beautiful swimming pool that it leads onto. But this locker room was especially fascinating. It was a labyrinth of doors that were both open and closed. It was a tiled structure. It had no edges. It was an extremely visually fluid space that is, in effect, totally transparent. The choice of black and white in this case was for two reasons. One, the actual architecture is quite monochromatic. It's a white tile with metal detailing. I also felt that using color would lead in a more descriptive direction than I wanted. I was kind of trying to understand the space from the photograph, and so I mapped it out from memory. Because of all the chambers were basically identical, I could shift in space but effectively have an identical image with really only minute circumstantial differences. And this installation is dotted with peepholes, and you look at the numbers of the peephole, but then once you look in the peephole, you can see the numbers of other peepholes. It was like a mathematical equation punctuated by a sexual act. And the way this space was designed, you really felt that this architect was a master chessman. I suppose that, in looking at the entire range of my work, I would say that it's been the work of an escape artist, that something about me really forces me to camouflage myself against the potential that someone will ever know who I am or what I do.